What if I told you the very people entrusted with defending America might be getting twisted into tools for political theater? What if decisions made at the highest levels of the Pentagon are being driven not by strategy, not by national security, but by optics, vanity, and political gain? Today's video peels back the curtain on one of the most explosive hearings in recent memory, and I guarantee, by the end, you'll see why this isn't just about one man's failings. This matters for every American.
The Secretary of Defense has just responded last week and admitted that the $1 billion mission that he led against the Houthis, who do not have a navy, has not restored the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels through the Red Sea, and in fact has resulted in the loss of two F-18 Hornets to the tune of $60 million apiece, as well as, I believe the last count was 7 Reaper drones to the tune of another $200 million. You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our first Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about, more than all of this, is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the warfighters, and yes, the warfighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming bases for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base that was named for a traitor who took arms against the United States of America, led troops who killed Americans. It was renamed for Mike Novosel, a Medal of Honor recipient, who in his citation for the Medal of Honor includes that he saved 29 American lives, to include hovering backwards in a helicopter towards an enemy bunker where a wounded American was laying and saved that person, including after being taken fire himself. I know a little something about what it takes to fly a helicopter when you've been hit by enemy fire. That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. We know that California is just a deliberate, systematic, political, and dangerous campaign led by you. We should not be using our military to play cops against Americans. General Kane, as chairman, a key part of your job is to coordinate military planning across the joint force. Is the department currently incorporating into any military plans expanding the use of the reserve forces to include the National Guard or active duty troops to support domestic law enforcement, including in other locations in the United States?
Senator, we careful.
No, General.
Well, it's not really a yes or no question, Madam Senator. We plan all kinds of different things.
I think it is a yes or no question.
I'm not aware of anything, but the reason why I'm answering is the tags may be looking at something that I'm not aware of.
What are you doing at your level? You're not aware of that being happening at your level? Because we know that on his first day, President Trump directed U.S. Northern Command to revise its unified command plan to add new planning requirements to combat, and I quote, criminal activities. A series of follow-up executive orders continue to redirect DOD priorities to supporting domestic law enforcement, including one in April that tells DOD, and I quote, use national security assets for law and order. In other words, do law enforcement's job. I'd like to enter these executive orders into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Secretary Hegseth, you say you are focused on warfighting and warriors. These are your words. Yet you are diverting untold DOD resources and attention to a fundamentally non-military mission of domestic policing. Across our country, we have qualified police officers who are trained for that mission. They know those streets better than the Marines who deploy to Los Angeles, who normally focus on the Indo-Pacific. And you recently approved 700 more troops in 3 other states to do admin and logistics works for ICE. You say all of this is valuable training, but I would much rather have our troops do tough, realistic training relevant to high-end combat. Instead of typing in spreadsheets for ICE, they should be conducting live-fire maneuver exercises. Instead of patrolling American neighborhoods and standing in front of federal buildings, they should be rehearsing call for fire missions. We have local police who can stand in front of those federal buildings. And the list of distractions goes on. You are encouraging the DOD workforce to go work for DHS in increasing numbers. You're pulling the military away from facing foreign enemies who literally say things like death to America. And you're putting troops with weapons aimed at Americans. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your incompetence.
What happened in this Senate hearing was more than a political clash. It was one of the most forceful and consequential moments we've seen in a long time. Senator Tammy Duckworth, a combat veteran, helicopter pilot, and double amputee, delivered a powerful, detailed critique of what she says is a breakdown of competence and accountability inside the Department of Defense under Secretary Hegseth. And her words hit differently because she's lived the consequences of bad leadership in war. Duckworth starts by laying out what she describes as hard facts: money wasted, missions mishandled, key objectives missed, and millions of dollars in aircraft damage. She points specifically to Hegseth's billion-dollar military campaign against the Houthis, an adversary without a navy, and argues that the operation failed to restore commercial shipping, failed to achieve its goals, and burned through massive resources with little to show for it. She frames all of this not as isolated errors, but as a consistent pattern of misjudgment and poor decision-making. Then she pivots to the accusation that shocked a lot of people, the claim that Hegseth shared classified operational details over Signal, allegedly just to impress his wife. Duckworth calls this reckless and dangerous, saying it puts U.S. service members at risk for no legitimate reason. Coming from someone who has personally paid the price for failures in military judgment, this accusation lands with enormous weight. One of the most striking moments is when Duckworth calls out Hegseth's complaints about renaming bases that once honored Confederate officers. She makes it personal, saying she served at Fort Rucker and would far rather serve on a base named for a Medal of Honor recipient who saved American lives than for someone who fought against the United States. It's a moment of moral clarity that underscores her argument about what values the military should uphold. But Duckworth's biggest warning is about what she sees as the politicization of the U.S. military. She draws a direct connection between directives from former President Trump and the deployment of active duty troops and National Guard units into American cities, not for national defense, but for domestic political purposes. She argues that the United States already has police forces and law enforcement agencies, and that there's no legitimate reason for Marines to be on city streets doing ICE paperwork or acting as political props. Her point is that using the military in this way erodes a foundational American principle: the armed forces are not to be used as a domestic police force. She warns that these decisions don't just hurt the Constitution, they weaken national security. Instead of training for real threats, she says, troops are being pulled into missions designed for optics, not safety. In her closing message, Duckworth says that if Hegseth wanted a job running Homeland Security, he should have applied there. But using the Pentagon as a political tool, in her view, is unacceptable and dangerous. For her, this hearing wasn't about scoring points, it was about drawing a red line around the proper use of the U.S. military. This moment is resonating because it's more than criticism. It's a warning, delivered by someone who understands the stakes from lived experience, and who believes the boundaries between politics, national security, and military power are being dangerously blurred. This hearing is more than just a show of outrage. It's a wake-up call. And it forces every American to choose: stand for accountability, or look away. So before you scroll off, before you change the channel, ask yourself, do we really want our military to be a backdrop for political theater? Do we really want lives, national security, and trust in command sacrificed for optics? Because once that line is crossed, there might be no coming back. If this matters to you, if you believe in a military that stands for defense, not domestic theater, you need to stay alert. Share this video, spread awareness, hold leaders accountable. Because when we ignore spectacle disguised as patriotism, we enable the next betrayal. If you want me to break down every single allegation, the full list of failures, and what happens next, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. I want to know what you think. Are we ready to draw that red line? Or will we continue letting leadership repurpose soldiers as props for power? Thank you for watching. Stay informed. Stay critical. Stay responsible.